Righty ho, excellent, excellent. So here we go, Pants, I'm going to show us. Today's topic of transit, which is an interesting one, because my mind automatically goes to white van when I think transit. But Ben,
that's what I was planning to do. Just 300 slides of my favourite transit vans throughout the year.
Do you know what? We did have an offer of that.
There's probably like Van Weekly that you could have, still subscribed to.
From a guy who does removals. I go, I've got a transit. I can tell stories about my time in the transit. And I'm like, and I knew the guy, so I opted out. Just because it wouldn't be appropriate.
Not that we're
for this
stereotyping all white van people.
We are not.
And there may be white van ladies out there.
White van humans.
Yes, I think so.
But transit was designed by our Cleveland chapter. Thanks, Cleveland. Lovely graphic. And Aaliyah Ray illustrated it. Hi, Leah. If you ever
Nice
watch
picky.
this, thank
We
you
like
very
the
much.
picture.
And her definition is, how can we make space for new ideas and creative energy while staying in place? And that's the theme of today's Creative Mornings. So on to this guy. This guy is Ben Lumley. He's sitting virtually next to you on this screen, or on your own screen, technically.
Yeah.
I'm having a lovely time this morning. This is going very well.
You're fine. You're fine. Just keep talking. It's good.
Oh, Charlene's coming in. Hi, Charlene. Just joining us in time for Ben's talk. So Ben, if you haven't guessed by the emails and the picture on screen currently, is an internationally rewarded and accoladed and applauded sports photographer and an amazing human to boot. So we're about to click into Ben's talk.
So when Tim first approached me to do this Creative Mornings talk, I figured, what the hell, this will be easy. I photograph movement for a living. But then the more I thought about it, the more I realised that I wanted to show you more than just my favourite movement images and regale you with tales of adventures that I had last year, including watching the sunrise over Doha in about 5 o'clock in the morning, which, for the record, was pretty dang special. But the more I thought about it, the more I realised that I wanted to talk about my favourite saying and my motto for life, which I actually have tattooed right on my left forearm. I've actually got 6 tattoos in total, but this one has been a huge motivator for my life and it's incredibly special. And I want to talk to you about it today at this Creative Mornings talk because it fit perfectly with the theme of transit. So if we rewind the clock a few years back, I was working as a web developer and I was really heavily into like the personal development space. You know, the kind of thing, reading the Tony Robbins books, listening to Tim Ferriss podcasts and absorbing everything Gary Vaynerchuk ever said. I was a full-on PD junkie. I wanted it as soon as I could, as often as I could, whenever I could. One thing I really got into was kind of like films and the motivational quotes and sayings from within them, and I'd watch them over and over and over and over again to get myself in a really good mental state, even though at the time I didn't really felt like I was doing anything with that knowledge. One of the ones that really stood out for me was a clip from the 2006 film Rocky Balboa. It really resonated with me. I don't know why, but it really did. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning's done. Going through a lovely midlife crisis and to the shock and horror of my mother, I decided to set out and get it tattooed on my forearm. I wanted just keep moving, written down on me all the time so that I didn't forget it, because it actually felt like something really important that I needed to remember. As I got Welsh dragon blood running through my veins, I decided to go one step further, and I had that tattooed, inscribed on me in Welsh. Looks pretty cool, right? My main reason for getting it at the time was that I was in the middle of marathon training, and for me, I needed a permanent reminder to keep slugging away when those hard miles kicked in. It became a really powerful reminder on my long runs to keep digging in and see it all the way through, and to importantly, keep moving forward. But over the years, as I reflected on it at different points in my life, the motto, keep moving forward, became hugely powerful and a much bigger thing, and one that as a creative, I've lived by on a daily basis. You see, every time in my life when it's been hard or I felt stuck or I've been in a difficult situation, if I've just kept moving and I've taken some kind of action, things generally start to work out. At least at a minimum, things start to happen. If I sat and did nothing, and if I sit there and allow nothing to happen, nothing will happen because I'm not doing anything to affect that change. Sometimes when we feel stuck in our creative problems, we can struggle to find a way out and we can struggle to see the solution. But what if you didn't look for the solution? And what instead, if you just looked at what action you could take right now? Any action, literally any action, just to keep moving forward. Let's put this in terms of examples that I can give you kind of from my very, very recent life. Over this summer, I've achieved a bucket list goal for me, and I've run an ultra marathon. If you don't know what an ultra marathon is, it's basically a running distance, anything over 26.2 miles, which is the standard marathon distance. So in theory, you can run 26.3 miles and you can class yourself as an ultra runner. But ultra marathons and ultra runs tend to fall into different categories. They're usually around about 50Ks, which is about 31 miles, or 50 miles, or even 100K and 100 miles. There are some very, very crazy people out there who even do stuff that's 200 miles plus long. When I started running about 10 years ago, I was introduced to endurance sport by a friend. I was 4 stone overweight. I was looking for something that would help me get a little bit fitter and a bit more active. And he was an Ironman athlete and insane. He would go off and do 200-mile bike rides on a weekend and not think anything of it. From the early days, I was enthused with a love of endurance sport, and long distance running particularly kind of floated to the surface. Back then, my big hero was a guy called Ray Zahab, who ran over 4,300 miles across the Sahara Desert with some friends of his as part of an ultra adventure run. The romantic feel of that, of running long, of having these big epic adventures, really, really resonated with me. It was really something that kind of I got really excited about by reading and watching stuff online and on YouTube, and I thought, that's the stuff for me. I never really felt comfortable as a short 5K or 10K runner. I wasn't particularly excited about getting on the track, but the idea of disappearing off onto a trail somewhere for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours really, really appealed to me. And it was that I kind of strived to work to as the months and the years went on. That was the kind of the fire that burnt inside me when I started running. But I was never able to put all the pieces together in order to enable me to run that long stuff. I got pretty close a few times and actually managed to complete a marathon at 26.2 miles back in 2016. But after a few shorter races, immediately after that big marathon, I kind of dropped off my training. I stopped running consistently and I focused instead on launching my business, which was about 3-4 years ago now. And the consistency in my running and my training at that point really, really kind of slipped away. It became a part of my life that wasn't as important anymore. I've always run in those times in the last 3 or 4 years, but it was never consistent. Fast forward to the start of lockdown, and I was about a stone heavier than I wanted to be, and I needed some kind of mental outlet to take me away from the depression of the lockdown and the pandemic that we were all suffering. As a creative, as a business owner, over the last 8 months or so that we've been in the pandemic, I've lost about £25,000 of work, which is, for a sole trader like me doing what I do, quite a substantial chunk of money. I've spent the last kind of 6 months just watching events and races and client bookings and bits and pieces just getting scratched off the calendar and postponed and moved and then cancelled and delayed and then cancelled. And at the start of lockdown, that was something that was really, really difficult. So I decided to get back into some regular running. It was only meant to be sort of 3 or 4 miles every day or every couple of days, but it was enough of a mental outlet for me to get out of the house, get exercise and get some fresh air and get into nature. And the more I did, the more I realized that I wanted to go for that solo ultra distance run. If I didn't have the time to do it now, when I literally had nothing to do, I was probably never going to get it done. This ultimately led me to running a 33-mile ultra race in the Peak District with a race company called Mavericks back in September. To say that it was a long day in the office would probably be an understatement. I was out for 7 hours and 40 plus minutes. It was a very, very long, hard day. We climbed up over the height of Ben Nevis at points from the cumulative distance that we were running on. It was a really, really long day. And I did it simply by keeping moving forward. It was that simple. Sounds simple, it wasn't simple, But that was the basis of what I was doing, was just to keep moving forward. You don't run those kind of distances and think about running that distance. What you do is you run to the next checkpoint, you run to the next hill, you run to the next point in the scenery that you can see, you run to literally the next fence post. And I remember running through fields at around about 20, 22, 23 miles. We were running through 3 or 4 fields. I was in a really, really bad place. I was really, really struggling. And I was just thinking about getting to the edge of each field and not having to worry about anything else. Because if you think about the whole distance as a whole, it's really, really hard to kind of get your brain to wrap around that. So you have to go for slightly smaller action points along the way. The trick is to keep moving. Time at that point becomes irrelevant. As long as you're moving, you'll finish. If you stop and you stop moving forward, you're not going to finish. That's just how it is. What matters is that you just keep moving forward. Unfortunately, like a sicko, I've actually run 2 of these things now in the space of 2 weeks. I actually ran my second one on Sunday, just gone, a few days ago, and I went through the 50k marker around about an hour faster than I did back in September, in just under 6 hours, 5 hours, 59 minutes and 20 seconds to be precise. I'd actually tried to run the ultra distance on the course that I did on Sunday back in August, but had quite serious problems with my kidneys and then ended up breaking a toe, and then kind of lost that chance. So I ended up going into the race instead out in the Peak District to do that. But then when I did the Peak District race and I completed it and I knew I could do that distance, I kind of knew that I wanted to go back and finish off that attempt that I tried in August. I'd got really, really close last time. I got to like 25 miles. I was about 5 hours in. Like I felt like I was going really, really well. But in the last sort of hour or so, my kidneys started to shut down and I was getting quite seriously ill. So I knew I kind of wanted to go back and get that finished. So on Sunday just gone, I've literally gone out there and done it again and ticked that box off. And to be able to say I've done 1 ultramarathon for me is key, but it's really special to say that I've been able to do 2, especially in the space of 2 weeks. And it was just a mile at a time, a section at a time, ticking the miles off, ticking the steps off, watching the miles tick past on the watch, knowing that as long as I kept moving, as long as I kept pushing forward, that was all that mattered. And it was actually around about the 21, 22 mile mark that I realized that the motto that I have tattooed on my arm, just keep moving, would actually be a much better thing to talk about to you today than kind of lots of fancy, lovely pictures, and actually talk about how that affects us and how as creatives, the idea of transit and moving forward is really, really important. We all get stuck in life. We've all got these lofty creative goals that we all want to achieve. And over the last year as creatives, all of us have been stress tested mentally, and our businesses have been stress tested as we've gone through this horrible global pandemic. But the best way I've found to do this, and the best way I've found to keep going, is just to keep moving forward every day. Little action steps, little goals ticked off, little tasks ticked off every single day, every single week, every single month, and having things to work to and working in small steps to those goals every single day. Little steps in the right direction are better than no steps at all. So if you're struggling to come up with ideas for a design, or you're struggling to finish a design, why not just grab a pen and a piece of paper and sketch some ideas out for the morning? If you're finding it hard to come up with your next social media campaign, grab a piece of paper and a pen, grab your laptop, and why not just write rubbish for an hour and see what comes out? You might be surprised just what comes out of you when you're just moving forward, when you're just doing stuff to make stuff happen. The problem most of us have is that we dismiss these kind of small action steps because they don't get us to our ultimate goal particularly quickly. We feel like we should do something that achieves the goal in that moment, and that's actually the wrong way to think. Achieving a goal, whether it's running some stupid ass distance race, whether it's launching a business, whether it's pitching to a client, whether it's finishing a massive project, is actually about small steps. It's about small tasks completed. You don't go from 0 to 100 in one step. You've got to go through each incremental movement. And for the motto on my life to say, just keep moving forward, is so important to me as a creative, because it reminds me just to keep going forward. If I'd have started my business 3-4 years ago and thought, right, in the first week, I want to have 20 clients and I want to be turning over X pounds a month, and I want to be working with this client, this client, and this client, and doing these events and these races, it would have been unsustainable. But by thinking, right, today I'm going to speak to 3 new clients. Today I'm going to put 4 new pictures out onto Instagram. Today I'm going to contact this potential client. I'm going to contact this potential race. And if you repeat that every single day, you actually move forward an awful lot quicker than you think you will. And stuff starts to happen. When you're moving and when you're in transit, as this theme for today's talk is, the universe, in my opinion, kind of conspires with you to make stuff happen. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've worked relentlessly for weeks and weeks and weeks on projects and pitching to clients and all that kind of stuff, and you feel like nothing's happening, and then eventually the tipping point happens, and then all those things start to work, and it's because you've kept moving forward. And if you don't do that, if you just sit there and wait, then actually what you find is nothing happens at all, because you're never taking any kind of action. Some of you might already know that a key part of my morning routine, so I've got this like big morning routine that I do. It takes me about an hour to do every day. It's really, really important to me. It starts my day off really, really well. One of those things that I do in that morning routine is journaling. So I write for about 15, 20 minutes, and it's usually just kind of what's in my head and what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. And it's a really good way of getting that stuff out of my head and onto paper. But there's 2 things I do after I've journaled as part of that journaling practice that are really, really important. The first one I do is to write down one thing that I'm really, really grateful for that day. So it could be as simple as coffee when I'm really tired. It could be something like, I'm really grateful for a client that I'm working with today, or a project that's gone really, really well. It could be all sorts of different things, but that sets me and will set you into a really, really good mind frame. The other thing that I do, which is kind of the reason for me telling you this, because I think it's really important, is I write down 5 things that I want to achieve that day. It's known as the Power List. It comes from a guy called Andy Frisella. If you don't know who Andy Frisella is, definitely worth checking him out online. He's a bit sweary. I apologize. American, quite opinionated, very sweary, but actually has got some really, really sensible things in his head. And his concept of the Power List is really, really good. I don't even think it's his concept, but it's one that he talks about quite a lot. So the problem with to-do lists ultimately is you can have a list of like 40 things to do for that day, and it's like, I have no idea where to start. I have no idea what to do. Like, it all seems too overwhelming. I'm going to go and get myself another cup of coffee, or I'm going to go out for a walk. So to-do lists of that magnitude become like way too big. They can become way too unmanageable. So what the Power List does is it allows you to focus on the 5 things you need to do, 5 things you need to do that day that move you forward, that tick the needle over like literally one little step, but it's enough just to keep you moving forward. Those things need to be kind of business and goal related and creative goal related, if you're going to use this the way it's intended. What I tend to do 9 times out of 10 is it will be creative focused, it will be work focused, it will be contact client X, it will be invoice client C, it will be finish off this project, it will be deliver this image, blah, 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 blah. And those things just move me forward all the time. They're always slowly moving me forward. However, if I'm just kind of struggling mentally, as creatives, we do have this kind of rhythmic roller coaster ride. I've often referred to it as like the creative roller coaster. You have these massive highs and you feel amazing and it's brilliant and like you're living on top of the world, and then the next day you just at rock bottom and nothing makes sense. I remember the very first big worldwide event that I ever did. It was the Leeds World Triathlon Series. It was a really, really, really big deal for me. I'd gone up there with kind of no real hopes or aspirations for it, but like my image had been the image that kind of the winner had used from one of the races, and I woke up the following morning to just this huge kind of like buzz going through my social media feed from people resharing and commenting and all this kind of stuff, and it was just going crazy. But then the following day, I was out hanging my washing out on the line thinking, so I've gone from like this high to like this low, and now I don't know what to do with myself, because I knew I had like a week or so before I had any more work, because it was quite early on in the business at that point. So to understand that we all have these creative roller coasters is really, really important. And on those days where I'm at the bottom of that kind of run of that roller coaster, that Power List becomes go for a run. That power list becomes, make sure you stay in your calories. I track my calories every day just to make sure I'm kind of being accountable for what I eat, all that kind of stuff. It can be things like, drink 3 glasses of water. It can be the basic stuff that keeps you moving that day, that's personal, because you feel like it's a really difficult day. And you know how it is. You wake up in the morning, you know whether that's going to be a great day or whether you're just not quite on it. But the power list is really key because it allows you, whatever you're putting on that list, to keep moving forward. It's not about complete this massive task. It's about, I need to do this one thing, and I need to do this other thing, and this other thing, and this other thing, and this other thing. Once you've completed the power list, you can do what the heck you like, right? If I finish my 5 things by 10:30 in the morning, technically, if I wanted to, I can have the rest of the day off. And sometimes I do, because I've done the things that day that move me forward. But sometimes you get on such a roll, once you've done those 5 things, you just carry on. And sometimes you get to the end of the day, you haven't got any of those things done, or you've got 2 or 3 of those things done. But the idea of the power list is just to keep moving you forward a little bit every single day. What a lot of people do, what a lot of business owners do, what a lot of creatives do, is they have these big flurries of kind of work days. They work for like 2 or 3 days and then they stop. And then it feels like a grind to get going again. But actually, if you pace yourself and do 5 actions a day, 3 actions a day, 7 actions a day, you actually start moving forward and build momentum an awful lot quicker. I put the success of my business and my work down to the fact that for the first 18 months to 2 years, I grafted really, really hard. And I did that by following the power list religiously every single day for nearly 2 years. 5 actions every single day, even at the very first day of the business, on my birthday, 7th of April. On my birthday, when I launched the business, I had 5 action points to do. I did those 5 action points. That was the day done. I won that day. I'm quite happy. And I did that every single day. And I didn't complete every 5 every time, because that's not how life works. But the fact that I was ticking off small actions and trying to move forward every single day made a huge, huge difference. The power list is basically the creative's equivalent of a mile at a time. It's those little by little actions that add up, that make the difference. So as we roll into Q4 of 2020 and try and write this whole year off, you might start to think about the things that you want to achieve at the end of the year before we tick into 2021, or even the things that you want to achieve in 2021 and beyond. If you're doing that already, or you're likely to do that soon, keep in mind the motto I have inked on my arm for the rest of eternity. That concept of keep moving forward. Try not to achieve your massive creative goals. Try not to kind of feel like you've got to do everything now. Small actions repeated every single day actually brings you an awful lot more kind of satisfaction and success and achievement than actually you think it will do. A step in the right direction is still a step. It still brings you closer to the things that you want ultimately. By staying still and doing nothing, you actually end up going nowhere. So remember, when you go away from this talk for the rest of the day, or this weekend, or in 6 months' time, when you're thinking, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, remember, Ben's got it tattooed on his arm. Just keep moving forward.
That was amazing, Ben. So many lessons.
Yeah.
So many life lessons. So you
Nothing like listening to yourself for 20 minutes on a Friday morning to get you going, by the way.